In today's video, I'm going to take you through what plantar fasciitis is and some of the signs and symptoms that you could expect to see if you have it. Now, do make sure you stay tuned until the very end of the video, as I'll also take you through some physical tests that you can try from the comfort of your own home to see if you have plantar fasciitis. And we're going to start right now. Just before we dive into the video, if this is the first time we've met, then welcome to Genuine Physio. My name is Luke and I am a physiotherapist from the UK. If you would like to know more about plantar fasciitis and other things pain and rehab related, then do hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. So what is it? Well, the plantar fascia is a band of connective tissue that attaches into your calcaneus, which is your heel bone, and then it stretches out, branches into 5 different bands of tissue, and those bands then attach into all 5 toes. Now, fascia is a very different type of tissue to muscular tissue. Now, muscular tissue tends to be quite elastic and stretchy in its properties, whereas the fascia tends to be a lot more rigid, a lot more tight, and it's far less pliable. Now, this is relevant when it comes to why we get it in the first place and some of your treatment options. A further point to make about the anatomy of the plantar fascia is that when we look online at pictures or we look in textbooks, we tend to see that one muscle attaches into the bone and stops, and then the next muscle attaches into the bone and carries on. In reality, when we look at cadavers, we see that these tissues merge into each other. So what really happens is the plantar fascia attaches into the heel bone and merges in and around the bottom of the heel, and the Achilles tendon attaches into the top of the heel and merges round, and then they attach and kind of merge together to become one tissue. And the reason this is relevant is because we know that having a tight calf complex or having issues in the calf and Achilles tendon is a risk factor for having issues with your plantar fascia. So let's talk about some of the signs and symptoms that you could expect if you have plantar fasciitis. Now, the first thing to say is it's very unusual for plantar fasciitis to come on after some sort of trauma or injury. It's much more common that it comes on insidiously, so gradually over a period of time. And it's most commonly associated with some sort of overload. So some sort of change to your routine that has meant that that area of tissue has become overloaded. If we think about a few examples, it could be that if you work out, you've gone from doing a routine that involves you having your feet on the ground for most of the time to doing more jumping, hopping, landing type movements. If you are a runner, you may have increased your mileage, your distance, your speed. You may have changed the gradient that you're running on, or maybe you've increased the frequency of runs during the week. A change in footwear can also equal a change in load. So typically the plantar fascia is more supported in a sporty trainer or a boot, whereas in the summer if you pop on some flip-flops or sandals, you do more walking in those, that can irritate the plantar fascia and lead to pain. And we can't also ignore the fact that weight gain also equals a change in load. Now, we know that weight affects tissues in 2 ways. Firstly, obviously the increase in weight is going to lead to more mechanical stress going through the tissue. But we also know, we think it's far more relevant and important, the more we learn about it, is that the more fat that you have within your body, the way your metabolism works means that as the fat is broken down, more inflammation is produced. And obviously inflammation is not great news for tissue health. Now, I mentioned earlier that the plantar fascia attaches into the heel bone. Now, with a lot of soft tissue or tendon problems, we find that the pain is most localized where the tissue inserts into the bone. And this is because at that point, there is the most concentrated, dense number of tissue fibers, which means that one common feature of plantar fascia is pain localized around the heel. That would be an insertional plantar fasciitis, but you can also have a non-insertional plantar fasciitis where you get pain or symptoms somewhere along the middle of the plantar fascia, and that normally presents as some sort of pain in and around the arch of the foot. Morning stiffness is another common feature of plantar fasciitis. It's very common that as you take your first few steps or you try and place your foot on the ground, either first thing in the morning or also after you've been in one position for a long time, that those first few steps can be really tight, sore and painful. But then what tends to happen is as the tissue warms up, as you get moving, the pain tends to dissipate. And with this in mind, the pain presentation can also be a bit confusing because sometimes the pain does ease when you walk or maybe even run, when you get moving and when it warms up. What's very common with plantar fasciitis is this latent pain, so the pain you get after an activity. What tends to happen is it can be a little bit sore, achy, stiff when you first start doing an activity. It warms up and then you don't get pain during, but it's that latent pain or stiffness either later that day or the following day that gives you an indication that the pain is still there or it's maybe not improving. So really do spend some time monitoring how long you're getting that latent pain for. If we think about a few activities that could aggravate plantar fasciitis, because the plantar fascia attaches into the base of the toes and the heel bone, the fascia is under most tension and load when the toes come off the floor or when the toes are extended upwards. So any activities that involve that movement are likely to bring it on. We're thinking walking barefoot, running or climbing the stairs. At this point, we should have a pretty good idea about whether we have plantar fasciitis or not. But I did say at the beginning of the video, if you stay tuned into the end, we'd go through a few physical things that you could look into at home to see whether you have plantar fasciitis. So let's take a look. The first thing you probably want to do if you are looking at anybody with a foot problem is have a look at their feet in standing. Now, in somebody with an irritable plantar fasciitis, it could be that any pressure around the tissue is painful. So it might be that the area of heel that's sore is painful just with equal weight going through both legs. So it could be that you have symptoms just in standing. Now, the other thing that you probably want to have a look at is the foot position. Does that person or do you have excessively pronated feet? So that's your stereotypical flat foot position, or excessively supinated feet, the opposite. Both of those things are risk factors for plantar fasciitis, but the caveat is lots of people have these biomechanical differences with no foot pain. So it's probably not something that we want to go in and start changing or playing around with straight away. It might be something that we try and address further down the line if your symptoms haven't responded to exercise and load management. Now, it's called plantar heel pain for a reason, because we get pain around the heel. So having a feel of the area is a good place to start. So you can put the plantar fascia on a stretch by extending the toes, and that may even elicit some symptoms in itself. But having a feel around the heel, typically around the medial calcaneal tuberosity, is often uncomfortable. If it's an insertional plantar fasciitis, your plantar fascia obviously runs through the foot as well, so it might be, if it's non-insertional, that you get some pain in the arch of the foot too. Ankle flexibility could also be a problem, and there is a nice test that you can try against the wall to compare left and right. So what you would do is you'll bring this is the foot we're testing, you'll bring your toe right up to the wall, see if whilst keeping your heel on the floor, you can bring your knee to the wall. And you're just going to keep sliding your foot back until you've reached your maximum point at which the calf is on a stretch whilst the heel is down. If you feel like the heel starts to come off to get closer to the wall, that does not count. So that's probably about my maximum. And then you would do the same. And you could compare the gap from here to the wall and see if there was a marked difference on either side. So let's say I can only do that on the right side, and that's my absolute maximum. That would indicate that there's probably some tightness through the calf and the Achilles, excessively so compared to the unaffected side. You've had a look at how much flexion there is in the ankle. You can also have a look at how much mobility there is in the toes, and or whether that elicits symptoms. So when you bring the toe off the floor, the plantar fascia is on a stretch. So firstly, does that bring on pain? Secondly, you can see that I've got a decent amount of movement and extension in that big toe. If on one side it looked like that, and on the other side there was less mobility because of tension in the plantar fascia, then that could be something that we want to focus on when it comes to the treatment program. Weakness within the calf complex could also be a contributing factor. So let's have a look at calf strength. So you can come on to, let's say the left side is the good side, and you can do a single leg heel raise. What you could do is try and do that to fatigue, count as many as you can until you physically can't do any more. So the calf is unable to do any more through the whole range. Let's say I've got to 25 on the left, then you move over to the affected side and you try and do the same. If you see a significant difference between left and right, it might be that you need to work on some strengthening exercises for the calf and the plantar fascia on that affected side. I do hope you found that helpful. If you did, then I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a comment below the video and let me know what signs and symptoms you had with your plantar fasciitis. You can also show your appreciation by tapping the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss any more of Genuine Physio's videos. If you did like this one, you'll probably like the one that I put together on treatment and management for plantar fasciitis, and there's some exercises that you can try to help with plantar fasciitis at home as well. Until next time, I'll see you again very soon.